Candace Cooper of the Locked On ACC joins Locked On Texans to discuss NFL prospects coming out of the ACC and who makes sense for the Houston Texans.
And to tie it all in, we want to develop a great team here that we can deliver wins to the city of Houston. We want to deliver a championship here to the city of Houston, and that's what it'll be about.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to a Monday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. I'm Johnson, Sports Guy Hickman. Of course, I'm joined by none other than Cody Davis, Sports Illustrated's own Texan beat reporter, Rockets beat reporter. Of course, make sure you guys are subscribed to the Locked On Texan podcast on YouTube and, of course, all of the major podcasting platforms. Today is Monday. We are officially, by the time you hear this podcast, we're 4 days away from
scary.
the NFL draft.
It's
it is
scary.
scary. The fan base is broken.
Wait.
Hopes and dreams are out of there. But Cody wants to start a positive trend that I think is very important.
Yes. And, there's a lot of stuff going on right now, but we're going to speak positivity, and we are going to speak it into existence that with the number 2 overall pick, the Houston Texans will select C.J. Stroud. So, John, listeners and viewers, if you could just bear with me, repeat after me. With the number 2 overall pick, the Houston Texans select.
The Houston Texans select
C.J. Stroud.
From
Ohio State. Everybody clap their hands. Come on. We got to speak positivity. Yeah. No fighting or nothing. We're speaking this into existence that the Houston Texans will not screw up one of, if not the most important draft in franchise history. John, you may have the floor again.
I'm a firm believer in positive affirmations, and so I think that needs to be said. If you're a Texan fan, you may want to start including that in your daily prayers.
At least up until Thursday. Thursday night about 7:15ish.
Pray to the football gods that the Houston Texans make smart decisions. Today we got Candace Cooper of the Locked On ACC podcast, and she's going to join our show. But Cody and I thought it would be a great idea to start off today's show kind of fun since it is the draft week officially. Let's go to the YouTube comments. Now, my man David at David, boy, y'all names, man, VW3DT, whatever that means. He commented, I hope Houston makes the right decision in the draft. We all know Young getting drafted at 1, speaking of Bryce Young, getting drafted at 1, so I hope we either take Stroud or AR-15. Please, for the love of God, please don't draft Will Levis. If y'all ain't going to draft any of those quarterbacks, just draft Anderson and run it back with Mills. Hell, who knows? This coaching staff may develop him better.
I like that. Yeah. I like that. I 100% agree. What's his name?
David.
We're going to just stick with David. Yeah. David, as of right now, you are my favorite comment as of right now because everything that you said makes sense, except for drafting AR-15 at number 2. I will prefer them if they pass up on CJ. Just go ahead with Will Anderson. Use that number 12 pick, probably trade back up in the top 10 or see if AR-15 will fall to you at 12. But if you don't go CJ, just get AR-15 because he is health-wise, because in my opinion, I think it's Hendon Hooker, but health-wise, somebody that could come in and basically, let's say at least give Davis Mills a run for his money. He is somebody that is closer just because he's a lot healthier. But look, John, once again, no disrespect, but anybody but Will Levis. I don't like Will Levis as a prospect. I don't see it in him. A couple weeks ago, I talked about, how much I just feel like he might be the most overrated prospect, not just at that position, but just throughout this whole entire draft class. I would prefer, look, if you don't go AR-15, you don't go Hendon Hooker, you don't go CJ Stroud, I think the best case scenario then would be just a running back with Davis Mills. And like David said, maybe, just maybe, this coaching staff will develop Davis Mills even better because, like I keep mentioning, Bobby Slowik, he was credited a lot for the success that we saw in Brock through those last, 7 to 8 games. So if he could get that out of Brock, maybe he could get something out of Davis Mills as well.
Yeah, and I do want to assure you guys that Houston will leave this draft with a quarterback. That has been confirmed to Cody and myself by several sources. Now, this is kind of funny. This is on a podcast. The name of the podcast is How Much Can We Trust the Houston Texans Week 1 before the 2023 NFL Draft? So how much can we trust this team right now before this week? This was a couple of days ago. And my man, The Ones 1444. That's his YouTube name. Again, shout out to you and whatever that means to you. But he kind of answered that question by saying 0% to do the right thing, 100% to do the most idiotic thing. This is why positive affirmations are important, ladies and gentlemen, because the fan base is tearing themselves apart. They're broken, and all of the hope that we started the video off with, that we've been starting the podcast off with every week since the press conference, has dwindled day by day. 100% to do the most idiotic thing. That's funny. I do want to mention something. So we're hearing this talk, and you guys have heard me say this over and over again, how much I do not trust Ohio State quarterbacks. Historically been saying this. And up until Justin Fields last year, like Dwayne Haskins, I think that my man Jay Stevens from Locked On Buckeyes put it plainly. He didn't really get he didn't get 3 years to show what he could do. You got Terrell Pryor, but he transitioned over to wide receiver. Braxton Miller transitioned when he got to the league. Troy Smith, nearly 20 years ago, that didn't work out. He also was a late round pick. There hasn't been, it was Justin Fields, CJ Stroud this year, and I believe 2 more quarterbacks since 1940, I believe, that has went in the first round for Ohio State in terms of quarterbacks. Now, I do, again, you guys have heard me say I don't believe in Ohio State quarterbacks, but I will say this. Florida hasn't had a dominant quarterback come out in how long?
No, they really haven't. Their track record isn't that good.
USC, I can go to Carson Palmer, but how many quarterbacks has USC put in the NFL? Oklahoma, especially during the time of Lincoln Riley, got Kyler Murray. I think people are starting to look at Kyler Murray differently. Number 1 overall pick, Baker Mayfield. He is on his 3rd team now. Michigan hasn't really put quarterback. Like, there isn't a QBU. LSU, up until Joe Burrow, who, by the way, Joe Burrow did come from Ohio State. LSU hadn't put a quarterback in the league. And if we are being honest about not Trevor Lawrence, I would say Clemson is the one team that they went from Deshaun Watson to Trevor Lawrence. But if we're being honest, Tua Tagovailoa, I don't know how much we really believe in him right now as a quarterback long term. Mac Jones, I can be honest about, he's my quarterback as a fan for the Patriots. He's having question marks around him. AJ McCarron never got a chance. So there isn't a QBU. And I think that CJ Stroud could be the quarterback that breaks that historic run of Ohio State not having dominant quarterbacks in the NFL. We've heard a lot about the talk of the S2 test. Will Levis scored high on that test, higher than CJ Stroud did on that test. And we have game film on Will Levis and the turnovers and the bad decision-making on film. And so I want to put it out there that even though history can repeat itself, there are moments where a new history can be created. And I think that this is an opportunity for whoever is going to draft CJ Stroud. Like, we can talk about, well, he had weapons, and that's why he was so good. Guys, Tua Tagovailoa, Joe Burrow, and Mac Jones, they did not lack a weapon at receiver. They did not. Like Joe Burrow, who had, I would say, the greatest college season of all time, had two of the top wide receivers in the league right now. Also, CJ Clyde Edwards-Helaire was a dominant running back for that team. So, like, they were able. Terrence Marshall was on that team. They had weapons everywhere, but that didn't stop nobody from going after Joe Burrow, right? So, I get it. There is a thought process there, but we can't exclude what other college quarterbacks has been able to do in that same situation as CJ Stroud and not CJ Stroud. I just wanted to say that. I still think Houston should draft CJ Stroud at 2. And I think that if they can't get him at 12, trade up for him to go get Jackson Smith in Jigba, get the quarterback, get the playmakers. This team can compete in the AFC South. This show is brought to you by BetterHelp. Getting to know yourself can be a lifelong process, especially because we're always growing and changing. Therapy is all about deepening your self-awareness and understanding, because sometimes we don't know what we want or why we react the way that we do until we talk things through. And it's okay to admit that. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. And I do mean wherever, ladies and gentlemen, because this is done entirely without a face-to-face session. It's great. Super convenient. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's done entirely online, designated to be convenient, flexible, and suitable to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today, right now. Go ahead and help yourself out to get started, and you get a 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com, HELP.com/lockedon to get started today.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this latest installment of Locked On Texans. As promised, I have one of my colleagues, Miss Candace Cooper from Locked On ACC. Candace, what's going on? And welcome back to Locked On Texans.
Man, that energy is crazy. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really, really glad to be here.
This is what, our third year getting together here on Locked On Texans. For those of you guys who don't know, if you follow college sports in general, Candace is one of the best hosts here on this network. I'm not just saying it because you're here. Look, there's a reason why. It doesn't matter if it's NBA draft or NFL draft. I'm always reaching out to my sister because I got to know what's going on, especially in the ACC.
Yeah, that is really high praise. I hope I can live up to it for your audience today, but it's really sweet. I'm glad to be here and give you the best I got, when it comes to my takes today.
Awesome. Well, Candace, let's jump right into it. As you already know, the 2023 NFL draft is full of a lot of great prospects at the wide receiver position. One wide receiver that I actually have my eyes set on is Zay Flowers, the wide receiver from Boston College. What can you share about Zay, and how was it to see him just get better and better every single year?
Yeah, I think Zay's story is really unique, right? Especially in the age of NIL, when everyone is going to the flashy place or going to the place with the biggest amount of pot to give you. And I think Zay was one who stayed loyal to the game, stayed true to his coach, and he's really sort of cashing in and been the man for Boston College in spite of their up and down season. So I think he's just so much fun to watch, whether it's his routes, whether it's his being able to get some yak. He is just incredible, super flashy. He's going to give you the best that he's got. And, when it comes to just being a guy who's small but mighty, he's that definition of, I'm absolutely not going to let my size be a detriment to giving you some good yards every game.
And really quick, sticking with Zay, because down here in the city of Houston, we definitely need to draft a wide receiver who could actually be this team's number one wide receiver in the next couple of years. Do you think Zay has that potential in him?
Similar to Brandon Cooks, right? Dealing with injury, trying to figure things out. Like, what is his body going to be like when it comes to just being able to maintain longevity during the season? I think that's going to be the big question marks because college is one thing. Getting hit by some grown men is a whole different beast. So, hoping that he can just stay available for the Texans if they choose to have him. But if you get him, you're getting an extremely dynamic player for sure.
It's funny that you mentioned Brandon Cooks because that is actually my player comparison for him. And as you know, the Houston Texans departed from Brandon Cooks this offseason. So that's probably why I take a liking to Zay. Everyone who knows me know that Brandon Cooks has always been one of my favorite players since he entered the league in 2014, 2015, or whatever the case might be. But looking at the defensive side of the ball, the Houston Texans, they need some help on that defensive front. What can you share about the defensive lineman Myles Murphy from Clemson?
Yeah, I think Myles is just one of those guys who has it all when it comes to what you want in a good defender. Like, his skill set is off the charts. He's able to be quick and mobile. He's definitely someone who is hard to block, but I think ultimately it's his feet that I would argue is probably his best part of his game. His hips are something that certainly need a good amount of work, but he's just big and aggressive, and he uses his strength, ability, and length to really get to the quarterback. And it's just something that you enjoy as a girl who loves some defense. I think Coach Ryan would really enjoy Myles Murphy.
Now, he came from Clemson.
Yeah.
Over the last couple of seasons, Clemson always provided some very good quarterbacks, one of which the Houston Texans had for several different reasons. He's no longer here. Another great quarterback is down in Jacksonville. However, when you take a look at the quarterback landscape, and of course, I got to ask you, who are some of the top quarterback prospects who are coming out of the ACC this season? Because as you know, the Houston Texans definitely need to upgrade at quarterback. And I find it kind of ironic that here we are in 2023 talking about quarterbacks, and not too many people are talking about a prospect coming from Clemson.
Yeah, 100%. So I think Malik Cunningham is definitely the only quarterback of note coming out of this specific draft. He's out of Louisville, but if you look a little bit ahead, you have guys who are really trying to make a name for themselves, whether it's Phil Dracovic, Brennan Armstrong. You have his name is, of course, leaving me right now that I see his face and all the things because I'm really trying to be real articulate on the show. But Quarterback Central has been an ACC thing for a while now. And I think it's just super important to get some notice for guys who are up and coming. 2 years from now, you could get Drake May, and that would be great for the band to get everything going out in North Carolina. But I think right now, if you want a flashy young guy who can run the ball well and give you some flashbacks of that quarterback out of Clemson, Malik Cunningham could certainly be a guy that you take, maybe not even draft him, but certainly sign him in undrafted agency, that little window right there.
Okay. Last question before getting out of here. Who and what are some of the other prospects that you are hearing coming out of the ACC who are not really getting attention, but if they get a shot in the NFL, they can definitely come in and make an impact?
Yeah, I think the list is really long. The ACC sort of gets this bad rep of being like a not so decent conference. However, we get guys to the league, we get guys winning Super Bowls, and beyond just Myles and Zay, you have Brian Brissy, of course, out of Clemson. You have Kalijah Cansey, who I think is going to be a stud wherever he lands, out of Pittsburgh. I think when we talk about small and mighty, I mentioned Zay Flowers, but you also have Josh Downs out of North Carolina. I think one who's one to be probably one of the best is Matthew Bergeron out of Syracuse, an offensive tackle. Whoever gets him is going to get a super articulate, super just student of the game type of guy, on top of being an excellent body out there on the field and able to protect that quarterback. So he's one that I would keep my eye on. If you think of secondary for your backfield, Jamie Robinson out of Florida State is going to be a stud. Garrett Williams out of Syracuse is going to be a stud as well. And I can't forget my guy, Benaconda, Israel. Izzy is one of the best to do it as a running back, as well as Sean Tucker out of Syracuse. I think those guys are really well. And if you're looking for a lengthy wide receiver, A.T. Perry is going to do good things for sure.
Really quick, and I know I said that was the last one, but you brought up a name that my co-host would probably kill me if I don't ask you about. Kalijah. What can you share about him? Because that is one of his favorite prospects from Pitts.
Like Kalijah's just, if you want a defender, write in the dictionary what I want him to look like, be, and execute. Kalijah Cansey is that guy. I think he's taken, his time at Pittsburgh to grow and develop, and Pitt being one of the best defensive teams, arguably, in terms of just having some dogs in the troop. Like they had previously that 6 guys get drafted. I think Pitt just quietly stays under the radar for how good their defense is. And Kalijah just brings that energy playing with the club. Like he'll do whatever it takes to be out there with his guys. And so I think all around team player is certainly something that Texans right now could use.
Texans could use a lot of help.
Hey, you just need someone ready to buy in, someone who's going to be in a nice city. I think it's hard. I think if you think about the Texans and going to a place like Houston, and what, football as the Texans is not as prominent because of Dallas and all the things, but you've had some pretty staple names out of there, right? Clearly you have my man, JJ Watt. So it's like, it's not something to just turn your head away from. I think it's a lot of potential that hasn't fully developed for the Texans.
You know what, Candace? One of these days we're going to get together during draft time, and I'm gonna be like, you know what? Ain't really much for us to talk about because finally the Houston Texans will finally get their stuff together. But hopefully, don't know when that's going to be. I honestly don't know. But one of these days,
I would hate to be. I would hate to be out of a job. So I hope they, they take their time with getting it together. But happy to come on and talk either way.
Awesome. Candace, really quick, where can our listeners follow you at on all your social media platforms? Be sure to tell them about all of your work.
Yeah, absolutely. You can follow us at Locked On ACC on Twitter, at Candace D. Cooper personally. We just hit the 1,000 mark on YouTube, so we're always looking for new friends over there. 1,000 is good, but 2,000 is better, we like to say. So come and join us and talk a little bit of craziness. Miami fans get on us, Virginia Tech fans, you name it. Someone's always not happy, but we have a good time over there. I'm trying to tell you. Awesome.
Sounds good. I would like to say talk to you next season. However, the NBA draft is coming up. So for Rockets coverage, I'm going to be reaching out once again.
Hey, we have some ballers for sure. Look forward to it.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this Monday installment of Locked On Texans. Once again, that was our sister, Miss Candace Cooper from Locked On ACC. Once again, she is one of the best college analysts, one of the best college reporters out there around. Please be sure to go check out her Locked On page over there on YouTube. Please do the same thing. Subscribe, like, and comment. And I just wanted to bring her on just to talk, just to showcase prospects that's coming out of the ACC that a lot of us are not talking about. John, early on in the show, you talked about how different colleges may not have what you call it, quarterback universities, but you mentioned Clemson. Everybody know Clemson had a pretty good run over the last couple of years. When you take a look at Deshaun, when you take a look at Trevor Lawrence, that's why I had to ask her, this might be one of the rare times over the last couple of years that Clemson does not have a generational or a franchise-changing quarterback coming out of their school. But she was able to name a couple prospects. But John, your guy, Elijah, she highlighted him. How happy would you be if the Texans get an opportunity to draft him, knowing how much help that they need on that defensive front?
So let me say two things. There is a team that I hope does not draft Kalijah, and this team may potentially be in the running to draft Jalen Carter, and that's Philly. I don't want to see Philly, not because I am a hater, because you add that type of piece, either one of those guys, to that defense, and it's just crazy. But I think, and I've been on record by saying this before, whether it was on or off the podcast, I think Kalijah Cansey is the best pure pass rushing defensive tackle in this draft. And he may be a top 5 pure pass rusher from the defensive line standpoint in the draft. So he's a guy that, again, I've loved the signings. Excuse me, guys. I'm a little sick right now. I love I've said it, Sheldon Rankins, Hassan Ridgeway, partnering them up with Malik Collins. But those two guys on 1-year deals, right? Kalijah Cansey would be a rookie on a rookie deal that you would be able to build a piece around. Now, I've also heard the baby Aaron Donald comparisons. And though I'm not a guy that loves to compare before there's competition, at the NFL level, you see some of his Aaron Donald's game, like a younger Aaron Donald's game in Kalijah Kancey, the way he's able to kind of swim move, rip through, and get to the quarterback or make a play in the backfield, like the speed. I don't think he is as big as Aaron Donald, but he does have some Aaron AD skill set. Not the other AD that may fall and may never play basketball again, but Aaron Donald. Shout out to AD. AD has been hooping for the LA Lakers, by the way.
Oh, no, he had one good game because the game before that he was terrible. The game before that he got hurt.
I'm sorry.
So that was one good game.
Locked on Texas. I apologize. But I think for Houston, he would be a player that could be an amazing foundational piece for D'Amico Ryan's defense for some years to come. Like he could be possibly what Quentin Williams is for the New York Jets. When they drafted Quentin Williams, you knew they weren't going to let him go. And then every year he got better and proved why they're not letting him go. Like this isn't a guy that a couple of seasons down the line, you're looking at him like we maybe looked at Nick Fairley, like when you came in with all the hype in the world. Now, we don't know how much longer you got in the NFL. So he could be that type of player. And depending on how Houston views the draft, their quarterback, weapons, and their big board, I wouldn't be surprised if he was a sleeper pick for Houston if he fell to 12 because of how they may view the roster that they have now in the entire draft. I think it will be a bad decision. I think that it's important for them to, address the offense with the first 2 picks, honestly. But down the line in a 6-year deal for a head coach, like in year 3, we may be looking at Kalijah Kancey like the New York Jets looked at Williams this year. If they had a quarterback, that defense is so stifling enough, they may make a deep playoff run with competent quarterback play without Zach. What's his face? Who your mama? So it wouldn't be an overdraft. It would be a risk. It would be a high risk, high reward type of draft. Thank you guys for checking out today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Locked On Texans. Give me a follow at John_Hickman12. Also, take those same 2 thumbs, scroll over to YouTube, search us up in the search bar at Locked On Texans if you ever haven't already, and subscribe, like, comment.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. With the number 2 overall pick, the Houston Texans will select C.J. Stroud from Ohio State. Positivity, let's speak it into existence, is going to work out on Thursday. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.